Testing 1 2 1 2. Testing 1 2. I think I have everything correct on my YouTube, hooked up to my mixer, my codec. And my goal is to implement my study practices. I think knowledge is power. And even in the daily law today, it said to put your faith in learning, not technology. It doesn't take long to get distracted with technology. And I'm practicing not getting that cheap dopamine until after I go to the gym, after I take care of my few classes and students, and then I can. It's still distracting. It's still distracting because I still want to implement editing my book for a half hour a day. I have an editor for my book if I can make it presentable. I can get my book published, so I want to practice editing my book every day for 30 minutes, make it presentable. I have my astrology studies, my year 1 course from Nightlight Astrology, Adam Allenboss, the best and very refreshingly masculine astrologer on YouTube. Has a family and super intelligent, and so their course, huge Nightlight Astrology course in November. Wanted to see where my knowledge was. And then reading at night, something that I'm interested in, 30 minutes. So it's an hour and a half of my studies that I want to implement every day. And I said I would do that by going live is the best way to have it archived immediately. I don't have to go back and try to edit things and post it and hopefully it loads. And instead, if you can have the courage, I think it's the best way to archive and read back and hear later. Not that we can pick up everything at one time, but to go back and reread it and re-listen to it. A book I've wanted to read is Attached. I finally bought this book, Attached, after learning about attachment styles. And why I put on YouTube, the caption on YouTube is maybe he's just not that into you because surely I had attachment issues that definitely could form opinions about you when you become so anxious attached and you're anxiously texting, and that pulls people away. Now people ask me if I'm an avoidant because I don't have anything to say to that, to the anxiousness, and then some of my friends get all my anxiousness still. So um but looking back on it, maybe this is something to, maybe it'll help us move on from whatever attachment. So this is chapter 1. It says decoding relationship behavior. Let's see. I'm super curious. So I got 30 minutes as my goal on the clock. We start about 7:15. So my goal is 7:45 so I can go take myself to dinner. And I set up a little bit differently today instead of in my office with all my trinkets. And actually, my super supportive ex always said to maybe switch it up and go in different places. And that's why when I built this house and remodeled this house, I was so blessed to get the last minute instead of renting in Detroit, having this house on the water. That I wanted every aspect of this house to be somewhere. My mark was on it that you can take me seriously, that I did what I said I was going to do, and I made it this far. So here to share and to learn myself, getting into our studies here. I'm very proud of myself, my beautiful home. I get to share with you decoding relationship behavior, chapter 1 of Attached. Only 2 weeks into dating this guy, and already I'm making myself miserable, worrying that he doesn't find me attractive enough and obsessing about whether or not he's going to call. I know that once again, I'll manage to turn all my fears about not being good enough into a self-fulfilling prophecy and ruin yet another chance at a relationship. Well, that doesn't sound familiar at all. What's wrong with me? I'm a smart, good-looking guy with a successful career. I have a lot to offer. I've dated some terrific women, but inevitably, after a few weeks, I lose interest and start to feel trapped. It shouldn't be this hard to find someone I'm compatible with. So one thing I think my exes probably demonstrated avoidance as I demonstrated anxiousness is that they never just said, "Hey, I need some space." Just need some space. I love you. Just need a little space. I've been married to my husband for years and yet feel completely alone. This was my biggest fear. He was never one to discuss his emotions or talk about the relationship, but things have gone from bad to worse. He stays at work late almost every weeknight. And on weekends, he's either at the golf course with friends or watching the sports channel on TV. There's just nothing to keep us together. Maybe I'd be better off alone. And I do like to study this idea of playfulness but gosh, anxious and attached. These attachment styles are real. We can't even play and have a good time. Each of these problems is deeply painful, touching upon the innermost core of people's lives, and yet explanation, no one explanation or solution fits the bill. Each case seems unique and personal. Each stems from an endless number of possible root causes. Deciphering them would require a deep acquaintance with all the people involved, past history, previous relationships, and personality type are just a few of the avenues that therapists would need to pursue. This, at least, is what we as clinicians in the field of mental health were taught and believed until we made a new discovery, one that provided a straightforward explanation for all three problems described above and many more. The story of this discovery and what came after is what this book is about. Attachment styles, and it's got magnets on the front of it. Is love enough? A few years ago, our close friend Tamara started dating someone new. Oh man, I'm not a very good. I hate reading fiction, but this is fine. I'm totally fine with it. When we speed up a little. I first noted Greg at a cocktail party at a friend's house. He was inevitably good looking, and I found the fact that I caught his eye very flattering. A few days later, we went out for dinner with some other people. I couldn't resist the glimmer of excitement in his eyes when we looked at me. But what I found most enticing was his words and an implicit promise of togetherness that he conveyed, the promise of not being alone. He said things like, Tamara, you don't have to be home all by yourself. You can come work over at my place. You can call me anytime you like. There was comfort in these statements, the comfort of belonging to someone, of not being alone in the world. If I'd only listened carefully, I could have easily heard another message that was incongruent with this promise, a message that made it clear that Greg feared getting too close and was uncomfortable with commitment. Several times he'd mentioned that he'd never had a stable relationship, that for some reason he always knew or grew tired of his girlfriends and felt the need to move on. Or we're crazy. We're all crazy too. Hola. Hello. Though I could identify these issues as potentially problematic at the time, I didn't know how to correctly gauge their implications. All I had to guide me was the common belief that many of us grow up with, the belief that love conquers all. And so I let love conquer me. Who does that? I thought he liked me. I don't know. I'm an idiot. The belief that love conquers all, and so I let love conquer me. Nothing was more important to me than being with him. And that's true. They say that our solar system switches from ourselves and being secure and around our own solar system into revolving around somebody else. And that attachment makes somebody avoid and run away. I shrugged them off, confident. Let's see. Yet at the same time, the other messages persisted about his inability to commit. I shrugged them off, confident that with me, things would be different. Of course, I was wrong. As we got closer, his messages got more erratic and everything started to fall apart. He began telling me that he was too busy to meet me on this night or that. Sometimes he'd claim that his entire work week looked crazy, that would ask if he would just meet on the weekend. I'd agree, but inside I had a sinking feeling something was wrong. But what? Why? Why would you think something was wrong? I mean, if you were anxious, I mean, I'm trying to recognize my own anxious attachment. If somebody pulls away, that's okay. And the fear of him not committing, okay. Um, from then on, I was always anxious. I was preoccupied with his whereabouts and became hypersensitive to anything that could possibly imply that he wanted to break up. But while Greg's behavior presented me with ample evidence of his dad's dissatisfaction, he interpreted interpreted pushing me away. Interpersist, maybe interpersist, pushing me away with just enough affection and apologies to keep me from breaking up with him. I think, this guy already sounds like he made some boundaries. Maybe that's a good thing for an avoidant. And of course, as someone anxious, we're like, oh shit, he doesn't like me. But absence makes the heart grow fonder. And I wish my ex had just been like, I needed some space. And me too, because I resented things, not um I have to be moving all the time because I'm just crazy. I just always have to be moving, accomplishing something, reading, making sense out of my life, which not a lot of people do. I think my PTSD had a lot with not being able to sit still. After a while, the ups and downs started to take a toll, and I could no longer control my emotions. I didn't know how to act, and despite my better judgment, I'd avoid making plans with friends in case he called. I completely lost interest in everything else that was important to me. Before long, the relationship couldn't withstand the strain, and everything soon came to a screeching halt. Yeah, I felt like there's no closure because, like I said, maybe he's just not that into you. I don't know. His mom had a lot of shit to say about all the things I wanted to work on. As friends, we were happy at first to see Tamara meet someone new that she was excited about. Blah 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 blah. But this relationship unfolded. Blah blah blah. See, to me, I take too much responsibility in my anxiousness and like my PTSD and getting drunk when I shouldn't have. And yeah, like my person just really tried to tolerate me instead of maybe speaking up sooner. But maybe we're just not that into each other. So I called this on YouTube. Maybe he's just not that into you. Reading the book Attached, learning about adult attachment styles, the new science of adult attachment and how it can help you find and keep love. And my goal was to do it live so that I can archive it, read it back later, all my study disciplines. And, they say knowledge is power. I truly believe that. So going through the stories of anxious attachment and somebody pulling away, no big deal. We're looking for validation all the time. And so that's no good. So relationship unfolded, became increasingly concerned over her growing preoccupation with Greg. Oh, because she cut off her friends. Her vitality gave way to anxiousness and insecurity. Most of the time she was either waiting for a call, da 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 da, became too apparent time with us as she had done in the past. Too worried and preoccupied about the relationship to enjoy spending time with us as she had in the past. So all you're thinking about is this coulda, shoulda, woulda. And that's, like I said, a waste of time if this person's not even thinking about you. We had always considered Tamara to be an extremely well rounded, resilient person. Oh, yeah, that's what they say about me, too. And I'm just as anxious as all these crazy people in these stories, too. Ah, resilient and traumatized. Yours truly. Hashtag anxious attached. Although Tamara could point out Greg's history of being unable to maintain a serious relationship as in his unpredictability, I really don't, it's probably why, because avoidant, it's not all his fault either. My exes say their exes were all crazy. We're all crazy until we understand. And I've talked to people that are going to get therapy for their avoidant attachment and trauma. So, as children growing up, not being able to uh, emotionally express themselves because they had to take responsibility or take care of their siblings, or you know, you had to take care of mom's emotions so you couldn't have your own. I suffered when I was in my 20s. That's where I had an awful abusive relationship, that made me anxious attached, that just destroyed my attachment style when I was young in my 20s, and just constantly seeking validation and being codependent as a young mom. As experienced mental health professionals, we had a hard time accepting that a sophisticated, intelligent woman like Tamara had so derailed from her usual self. Why was such a successful woman acting in such a helpless way? Why would somebody whom we've known to be an adaptive to most life's challenges, even hell on earth twice, yet still has an ancient attachment style? um, become so powerless with this ex boyfriend? The other end of the equation was equally puzzling. Why would Greg send out such mixed messages? Although it was clear, even to us, that he did love her, there were many possibilities, complex psychological answers to these questions, but a surprisingly simple yet far reaching insight into the situation came from an unexpected source. Next chapter, here we go. From the therapeutic nursery to a practical science of adult love. At about the same time that Tamara was dating Greg, Amir was working part time at the therapeutic nursery at Columbia University. Here, he used attachment guided therapy to help mothers create a more secure bond with their children. Oh, I think I heard about this. This is crazy. Oh, this study can break your heart, but it's done well. So let's see, or it's done carefully. Let's put it that way. The powerful effect that attachment guided treatment had on the relationship between mother and a child encouraged Amir to deepen his knowledge of attachment theory. This eventually led him to fascinating material. Research findings by Cindy Hazan and Philip Shaver indicated that adults show patterns of attachment to their romantic partners similar to the patterns of attachment of children with their parents. As he read more about adult attachment, Amir began to notice attachment behavior in adults all around him. He realized that this kind of insight would have astounding implications for everyday life and could help many people in their romantic relationships. And we do talk about in the scientific community that's on all these podcasts and attachment theory, this study of mothers with their children, and then all of a sudden they're stonewalling them and they're stone cold. Hola, girlfriend. I love you so much. I'm studying attachment styles. And they were talking about a research that they did. A mother with her child and would be playing, everything's good, and then all of a sudden they would cut them off and be stonewalling them, and how the child would react, and how these different ways the child would react would tell you about their attachment and later on. But luckily, this was a controlled study. So, but when the mothers would stonewall their children, some of them would react. They would just ignore the mother completely, and they would ignore any other adult that came in the room, and they completely shut them off. And then they would have some of these young children that would try to touch the mother, trying to make faces with them for a while and try to like get them to respond to them. And if they didn't, they'd go play somewhere else and go play with another adult. And then eventually they would end up starting to give up. But they say anxious attachment can also be brought on by giving the child too much. Um, and so they want to be validated, or that they have a father that leaves or a parent that leaves and they don't have that validation, and then find that in adult relationships later on. Avoidance are kind of the opposite, where they're not able to express their emotions, and so they avoid emotional connection on that level, right? Like they don't That's too much for them. They're like, "Oh, whoa, all this anxiety." And I've noticed now people ask me if I'm an avoidant because unless you dance or play baseball or know anything about biblical astrology or philosophy, I really don't know what, if yeah, I just bought a house. I'm on the water. I mean, I got a pretty tall list now. So I'm not interested in, it's just hard to relate to people. And so I I don't always respond right away if I'm out dancing and I'm dancing with strangers that felt like I had more chemistry with than my boyfriends because they didn't dance, and dancing is a gift. Dancing was given to me. Dancing was for me to help other people, and then I know that for sure after this past weekend and auditions that I'm a dancer and I'm meant to be great, and I would love a champion one day, but or at least someone that's just willing to know how to turn me around when we go listen to a band play. But I'm learning myself the secure attachment, and so avoidance too. They don't like all the problems. They if they can't solve this problem, if it's emotional, you know, they they're like, this is too much for me. But I do think that hopefully avoidance will learn too how to break down communication. Anxious people will anxiously text. We will not stop texting. We want you to know we don't even care what you say. Just say something. Just say something. Say something to us. We don't even care. We're gonna keep spilling our guts out. No. And then we're like, oh man, we should have wrote it like that. I should have wrote it this way. I said it the wrong way. I gotta retype it, everything is now it just doesn't even sound right, and it's just anxious texting, and avoidance gonna avoid that, right? They're like, no, too much for me, and that's okay. It's making me learn. I remember Louise from Mexico had to tell me, "I'm sorry I could not be what you're needing," and it taught me a lot when I was getting into my dancing and stuff the last 6 years. And I know I have anxious attachment with my ex. I don't think there was any closure. And I think his mother got into that. And so I have to let that go because it's bigger than us. It's just bigger than us, you know. On my YouTube caption, he's just not that into you. You gotta let it go. You gotta let it go. And so that's just our anxious attachment. And now I'm not saying that's right for everybody. I think avoidance, are really might they fearful avoidance or dismissive avoidance. They might not want to come forth, not know what to say, not know how to take responsibility and take action in their own lives to make things, to the point where they would work out. Everybody's got something to work on. So I'm not saying if he would, if he wanted to, he would, because people said if he wanted to, he would, and then they said no, that's not true because avoidance might not, and then all of us anxious attachment, like he's gonna come back. No, well, let's not go that far. I think if we create harmony inside of ourselves, then we should be able to eventually manifest that harmony outside of ourselves, that those communication can come back into play, and right communication, right balance. To me, communication has got to be key. Knowledge has got to be key. And I don't think any of my exes really cared to dive into this kind of reading or understanding of psychology. Um, so I know they didn't like it when I studied Jordan Peterson or my other philosophers because of media said they were corrupt or this and that. And like, but you're not listening to the words that he's saying. So I'm one of those. There's not just men that listen to Jordan Peterson. I saw him in Detroit, and be careful of meeting your heroes. I saw him at Fox Theater, and I left thinking the world is going to need me. But it's a tour. People say their books and stuff on tour. It's all the same stuff. So back to our book. I wanted to see what this new character, Amir, who studies at Columbia University, now said he was working with those studies with the mother and children First thing Amir did once he realized the far reaching implications of attachment theory for adult relationships was to call his long lifetime friend Rachel. Man, see, this is, I hate all this fluffy stuff. Like, I'm all about facts. Like, do you have to tell it in story form? Like, just tell me whatever, what's going on. I'm trying to my disciplines. All right. We're practicing reading today in our disciplines. He described to her how effectively attachment theory explained the range of behaviors in adult relationships and asked her to help him transform the academic studies and scientific data he'd been reading into practical guidelines and advice that people could use to actually change the course of their lives. And that's how this book came to be. Well, this must be a great book then. If this is going to change the course of our lives. The secure, the anxious, and the avoidant. That's the next chapter. Adult attachment designates three main attachment styles or manners in which people perceive and respond to intimacy in romantic relationships, which parallel those found in children: secure, anxious, and avoidant. Basically, secure people find comfortable with intimacy, are usually warm and loving. Anxious people crave intimacy, are often preoccupied with their relationships, and tend to worry about their partner's ability to love them back. Avoidant people equate intimacy with a loss of independence and constantly try to minimize closeness. In addition, people with each of these attachment styles differ in. Now, I'm curious. I'm curious. I really think my avoidant in the past wanted to show more affection than he did. I just think I became unattractive because I was so anxious. I didn't give us enough time, I guess, to rekindle that maybe. Or because that makes sense to me. Their view of intimacy and togetherness, the way they deal with conflict, their attitude towards sex, their ability to communicate their wishes and needs, their expectations from their partner and their relationship. All people in our society, whether they have just started dating someone or have been married for 40 years, fall into one of those categories, or more rarely into a combination of the latter two, anxious or avoidant. Just over 50% are secure, around 20% are anxious, 25% are avoidant, and the remaining 3 to 5% fall into the fourth, less common category, a combination of anxious, avoidant, and sometimes I think they call that like disorganized, anxious, or organized avoidant. Adult attachment research has produced hundreds of scientific papers and dozens of books that carefully delineate the way in which adults behave in close romantic ties. These studies have confirmed many times over the existence of these attachment styles in adults in a wide range of countries and cultures. Okay, got it. Understanding attachment styles is an easy and reliable way to understand and predict people's behavior in any romantic situation. In fact, one of the main messages of this theory is that in romantic situations, we are programmed to act in a predetermined manner. Isn't that what they just said? Like, why do they gotta say it like 100 different times? Like, whatever. I'm all about concise, making things concise. So, where do attachment styles come from? We're almost at 7:45. I've already been reading for 30 minutes and talking for 30 minutes, but where do attachment styles come from? Initially, it was assumed that adult attachment styles were primarily a product of your upbringing. Thus, it was hypothesized that your current attachment style is determined by the way in which you were cared for as a baby. If your parents were sensitive, available, and responsive, you should have a secure attachment style. If they were inconsistently responsive, you should develop an anxious attachment style. And if they were distant, rigid, and unresponsive, you should develop an avoidant attachment style. Today, however, we know that attachment styles in adulthood are influenced by a variety of factors, one of which is the way our parents cared for us. But other factors also come into play, including our life experiences. More you'll see in chapter 7. like I said, I think my 20s really messed me up. So we're on the 10th page, Tamara and Greg, a fresh perspective. Well, maybe we'll start there next time. Evolutionary ties. Attachment theory is based on the assertion that the need to be in a close relationship is embedded in our genes. It was John Bowlby's stroke of genius that brought him to the realization that we've been programmed by evolution to single out a few specific individuals in our lives and make them precious to us. We've been bred to be dependent on a significant other. The need starts in the womb and ends when we die. Bowlby proposed that throughout evolution, genetic selection favored people who become attached because it provides a survival advantage. In prehistoric times, people who relied only on themselves and had no one to protect them were more likely to end up as prey. More often than not, those who were with somebody who deeply cared about them survived to pass on their offspring the preference to form intimate bonds. In fact, the need to be near someone special is so important that the brain has a biological mechanism specifically responsible for creating and regulating our connection with our attachment figures, parents, children, romantic partners. This mechanism, called the attachment system, consists of emotions and behaviors that ensure that we remain safe and protected by staying close to our loved ones. The mechanism explains why a child parted from their mother becomes frantic, searches wildly, or cries uncontrollably until they reestablish contact with her. These reactions are coined protest behavior, and we all still exhibit them as grown ups. In prehistoric times, being close to a partner was a matter of life and death, and our attachment system developed to treat such proximity as an absolute necessity. Image hearing Imagine hearing news of a plane crash in the Atlantic on the evening your partner is flying from New York to London. That sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach and the accompanying hysteria that you'd feel by your attachment system at work. Your frantic calls to the airport would be your protest behavior. An extremely important aspect of evolution is heterogeneity. Humans are a very heterogeneous species, varying greatly in appearance, attitudes, and behaviors. This accounts to a great extent for our abundance and for our ability to fit into almost any ecological niche on Earth. If we were all identical, then any single environment challenge would have potentially wiped us out. Our variability improves the chances that a segment of the population that is unique in some way might survive when others didn't. Attachment style is no different from any other human characteristic. Although we all have a basic need to form close bonds, the way we create them varies. In a very dangerous environment, it would be less advantageous to invest time and energy in just one person because they would not likely be around for too long. It would make more sense to get less attached and moved on, and hence the avoidant attachment style. Another option in a harsh environment is to act in an opposite manner and be intensely persistent and hyper vigilant about staying close to your attachment figure, hence the anxious attachment style. In a more peaceful setting, the intimate bonds formed by investigating greatly in a particular individual would yield greater benefits for both the individual and their offspring, hence the secure attachment style. I can believe that we bond for survival. And it certainly was a goal of mine to own a home with somebody one day and raise children and be safe. The ultimate goal, I think. True, in modern society, we are not hunted by predators as our ancestors were, but in evolutionary terms, we're only a fraction of a second away from the old scheme of things. Our emotional brain has handed down to us by Homo sapiens who lived in a completely different era, and it is their lifestyle and the dangers they encountered that our emotions are designed to address. Our feelings and behaviors in relationships today are not very different from those of early ancestors. Protest behavior in the digital age. Oh man, this is going to be good. All right, I'm going to read this one more chapter and then I'm going to dinner for sure because I totally earned it. Protest behavior in the digital age. See if we can get a good flow going here. We're practicing talking and practicing reading. Armed with our new insights about the implications of attachment styles in everyday life, we started to perceive people's actions very differently. Behaviors that we used to attribute to someone's personality traits or that we had previously labeled as exaggerated can now be understood with clarity and precision through the lens of attachment. Our findings shed a new light on the difficulty Tamara experienced in letting go of a boyfriend like Craig who made her miserable. Ouch. Well, Craig didn't mean it. She was being anxious. It did not necessarily come from weakness. It originated instead from a basic instinct to maintain contact with attachment figures at all costs and was amplified greatly by an attachment and by an anxious attachment style. For Tamara, the need to remain with Greg was triggered by the very slightest feeling of danger that her lover was out of reach, unresponsive, or in trouble. Letting go in these situations would be insane in evolutionary terms. Using protest behavior, such as calling several times or trying to make him feel jealous, made perfect sense when seen in this light. I feel like my exes would say some like messed up shit about like this person is hot or like and I like never tried to like I was never trying to like oh this person like you're not like as hot as this person. I don't know. I just thought that was rude. But I think it was like an insecurity thing. I don't know. Using protest behavior such as calling several names or several times, trying to make jealous, blah blah. When we really liked And what we really liked about attachment theory was that it was formulated on the basis of the population at large. Unlike many other psychological frameworks that were created based on couples who came to therapy, this one drew its lessons from everyone, those who have happy relationships and those who don't, those who never get treatment and those who actively seek it. It allows us to learn not only what goes wrong in relationships, but also what goes right. Okay, now the chapter of this is called Protest Behavior in the Digital Age. So, like, I was waiting for like Snapchat and some weird stuff to come up on here, but it didn't mention it yet. But I was thinking protest behavior, attachment theory, and protest behavior, anxious attachment, avoidant attachment. How would that show up in the digital age? I don't think this paragraph is really answering that question, but we'll continue. Just a little bit left. What's more, the theory does not label behaviors as healthy or not unhealthy. None of the attachment styles is in itself seen as pathological. On the contrary, romantic behaviors that have previously been seen as odd or misguided now seemed understandable, predictable, even expected. You stay with someone although he's not sure he loves you. Understandable. You say you want to leave, and a few minutes later, change your mind and decide that you desperately want to stay. Understandable. But are such behaviors effective or worthwhile? That's a different story. People with a secure attachment style know how to communicate their own expectations and respond to their partner's needs effectively without having to resort to protest behavior. For the rest of us, understanding is only the beginning. That's fair. I'll take it. Hola. Told you I was studying. From theory to practice, developing specific attachment based interventions. Oh no, man, I guess this is why I never went to a psychologist. I'm like, really? I think I'm anxious attached until I hear about emotions and stuff. I'm like, oh, I got enough. I got enough emotions. I don't need, do we have to say them out loud? Again, I anxiously text them to everyone. I'm working on it. So we made it to page 14, 15. Made it to page 15 in 30 minutes. That's not bad. We got our 30 minutes in up to 7:45, really 40 minutes in. So I'm proud of myself. I can now take myself out to dinner. I'm proud of myself for hooking all this up, which is a feat in itself, to hook all this up in my living room and get a little different vantage point and use this new microphone that I've had for a while. I haven't used, that I had to have. It's things that you have to have. And I would buy the Shure microphones if I have some friends that want to come on. I love Instagram now. I used to hate when my exes scrolled Instagram, and now I have Instagram, and it's such a great networking tool. So, all my friends in Detroit, if you ever want to do podcasts, telling our stories, sharing the things that we're learning, it's available. So, y'all let me know, and I'm going to dinner now. So we're gonna gracefully end my stream and wherever this button is. The big button that says end stream on YouTube, and we're on Instagram because it's the best way to document, archive everything live and have it automatically uploaded, and the work is done. So I'm proud of myself. Peace and love. This is the Mind Gym from Frosty, Detroit. And I will see you next time I'm reading in my Mind Gym and my studies. An hour and a half a day. Editing my book. We got a year one astrology course. Our test is due in November, so we got to get on our studies. Half hour. And in the evening, working on our Mind Gym, reading about the things that we like. I do nonfiction. I like facts. That's that I like to read about. So peace and love. And we're end on YouTube. And I'm gonna come